So you just want to get started then?
Yeah, I'm game with whatever.
All right. Well, I mean, what I know that we were, originally talking Back to the Future, right? So,
Yep.
and I think we even went so far as saying that we wanted to talk the trilogy. I don't even know, as we get into this, are we really going to be able to get, you know, just spending it on the first movie is probably going to fill, a very substantial amount of time. So we'll see.
Well, if it's anything like my episode, we talk a lot about everything.
Right.
So we're not going to get anywhere.
Well, that's just it. I don't like to be too scripted, and I don't want to be like, just reading factoids about the movie. So,
But the other thing is, depending on how much effort you want to put into each movie, will depend on how far we get tonight.
right. I get
Because we could just be like, okay, this is what I thought of it, and we could go through all three, or we could go in depth to things like, well, fashion and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. So, I mean, I'm pretty much already recording anyway, and sometimes I leave all my pre-show stuff in, as we're, getting ramped up. So.
Sword of omens, give me sight beyond sight.
Greetings, Starfighter. You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Sewer and the Kodan Armada. Get ready. Prepare for blastoff.
Hey, Doc, we better back up. We don't have enough road to get up to 88.
Roads? Well, we're going, we don't need roads.
Remember, no matter where you go, there you are.
This is 80s Reboot Overdrive Podcast.
We were dancing just like Swayze when Jennifer Grey had nose. Oh, how I miss the 80s, but I'm too young to really know. Too young to know.
Oh my god. That is like so dated.
Just for the sake of saying it, this is 80s Reboot Overdrive, and I am Dave. Online, I got special guest Kevin.
Hello, hello.
So Kevin is someone that I went. We did a show together, your show, talking about Ready Player One.
Yep, the Kevin Long Show.
Yeah, the Kevin Long Show. So you're a longtime Southgate Media alumni. So you're
Almost 2 years.
Yeah, look at that. That's awesome stuff, man. I mean, so, and I know that you delve into writing blogs and all of your extra projects. And we were just chatting a little bit about that, but tonight we want to talk about Back to the Future. Originally what I did was, just for the listeners to know, is I sent a post out on our secret Southgate Media group Facebook and said, hey, is anybody interested in talking the 80s movies? And
Well, now you've told everybody, so it's either not secret or we're going to have to kill them all.
Well, I didn't give them the address.
That's true.
Yeah, and they would have to be let in the door by Rob. So I don't know. We'll see if people try to get into it. So, but yeah, so I put that out there and I said, anybody interested in talking 80s movies? And Kevin just was immediate to respond and say, yes, definitely. And for whatever reason, our schedules haven't aligned. So we haven't done anything yet, but we were floating around ideas back and forth, and we just landed on just something that is the pinnacle of 80s movies, and that's Back to the Future. And we are hoping to even go talk through the whole trilogy. And it's really funny because there's other people that were in that thread that were talking about like Howard the Duck, and I thought
I would have been all over that.
Yeah, isn't that a cool movie?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and someone else was going with the Space Hunter movie.
I think we talked about it in the show that you were on my podcast. I didn't see a problem wrong with duck nipples until my kids decided that was their favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, I think we did touch on that. So, and there's nothing wrong with a little duck nipple, anyway. But that's my opinion. Um, yeah, so I mean, we threw that out there, and we finally got ourselves aligned where we can start talking about this epic trilogy. And I'm just curious, why did you pick Back to the Future as of all the '80s movies? Why that?
I think the reason is because you told me I had to focus on something. Because when you first threw it out there, I was like, oh man, there's so much. Let's just talk about everything. And you're like, no, let's pick something.
Yeah, because it'd be so.
I just looked at
like
the
random '80s movies otherwise. So
I just looked at the posters that you had put up there, and I'm like, all right, let's do Back to the Future.
Just makes sense. Okay.
Because that's one I know about. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily do research for these shows, but I like to know what I'm talking about before I say, hey, let's do that. Like Pretty in Pink, it's a good show, but aside from a pink dress, that's all I remember.
Oh, you don't even remember Ducky?
Oh, I remember Ducky.
Oh, John Cryer was the best in that.
And like we could talk about Breakfast Club because I don't know, I may or may not have been sent to detention for having a flare gun in my locker and it accidentally going off. I don't know.
Well, it's okay. I'll tape your buns together. So, yeah, we could play this game all night, man.
Yeah, we could. And just for the record, I did not have a flare gun in my locker.
Okay. And I've never taped anybody's buns together. At least I never got caught. Anyway, different topic.
For sure.
You've got to win! No, I'm sorry. Never mind. All right. So, yeah, for me, Back to the Future, I probably would say that we haven't covered it yet on 80s Reboot Overdrive just because maybe it's too on the nose, if that makes sense. We tend to get into this cycle where I don't know why it is, but we tend to go like more obscure when we're discussing topics or discussing things that we want to go, and then all of a sudden we realize that we've gone so long without doing like an 80s icon about somebody that we definitely should have done it before, like a Bill Murray or something. It's like, why haven't we done that? Of course you have to do that. So Back to the Future, why haven't we done a show on Back to the Future yet? We haven't. And
well, I think the obscurity is good because everybody knows about Back to the Future or Pretty in Pink or The Breakfast Club, but how many people actually know about the movie that Oingo Boingo did? Oh, not very many.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I don't. Did you listen to that?
I started it.
Oh, The Forbidden Zone.
Yep.
Yeah. I think co-host Scott needs mental therapy. Is what this is a movie that he'll revisit, and I'm good with just. In fact, I want to forget having watched it. So there's like no way I'm going to go be putting it back in and re-watching it. But it sounds to me like it's something he has on multiple occasions. So I think he needs therapy. I'll go on the record of saying that, and if maybe we could put like a GoFundMe together or something for him, I think that'll help. He scares me. Anyway, yeah, so that's the reason why we tend to go a bit on the obscure side, I think, just because we like to have fun with it, and we like to bring up these little nuggets of things that people may have forgotten that happened in the 80s. But that's not the case with Back to the Future. I mean, it's hard-pressed to find somebody that hasn't seen that movie.
For sure.
So, you know the legend of it was going to be Eric Stoltz then, right?
I don't.
Yeah, actually, Marty was going to be played by Eric Stoltz.
Oh.
Yeah, so for whatever reason, I know that there's many things that you can look up online to find out the reasoning, but I just think that there was something where the chemistry just wasn't working out right, or his screen presence. So they made the change, and they retooled it so that the scenes that they had already shot with Eric were now going to be shot by Michael J. Fox. So
Interesting.
you can find pictures of like Eric Stoltz in the diner, looking at his dad, you know, in the scene where we're used to seeing Michael J. Fox in there. So it's very interesting to know that they had actually
Yeah, it is.
started principal photography and started working on the movie, and then said, "Nah, this isn't working right, so let's do it again with someone
Well,
else."
I'm glad they did, because that could have been disastrous for the franchise
I think
if they
so.
had stuck with it.
Yeah.
Just because, like, Michael J. Fox has been good in all of his roles, even as the coach of the Mighty Ducks. But there's just some things that work better with who they are, like McFly. It works for him because that's who he is. Or Mark Hamilton as the Joker is the best Joker because they're both, like, they fit into that identity.
Now, did you just say that Michael J. Fox was the coach of the Mighty Ducks?
In the movies, yeah.
No, that was Emilio Estevez.
No, I swear, in the first one, he gets community service and has to go be the coach.
Yeah, that's not Michael J. Fox. That's Emilio Estevez.
Are you sure about that?
I am absolutely sure.
All right.
Absolutely sure. But I know what you mean, because these people become kind of synonymous with that role that they've been that they've taken on, and it's hard to think of Marty not as Michael J. Fox.
Right.
It's just and just thinking, and I can apply that to just about a lot of the movies that he was in. If you Secret of My Success, that just works with Michael J. Fox. Have you seen that one?
Which one?
Secret of My Success?
I have not.
Mom needs your help.
I can't help her right now.
Fine, I'll get it.
That's good. Mom needs help right now.
Yep.
So Secret of My Success, another great Michael J. Fox role. If you ever get a chance to revisit or visit that one for the first time, highly
I'll
recommend
have to check it out.
Yeah, it's him with Helen Slater, and he's a small town guy, and he goes to the big city and really gets a corporate job and starts just taking charge and doing his thing. Being the smart person that like an Alex P. Keaton from Family Ties is really what that turns out to be.
Okay.
So all right, so you haven't seen that one, but going back to the future. So then Leah Thompson, what did you think of her?
That's the girlfriend, right?
That was the mother.
Oh, the mother. Okay.
Yes.
I don't watch movies for actors and stuff. I watch movies to get away from people.
Good enough. Yeah, but
I think everybody was good in their role as who they were supposed to be.
Okay. All right. Well, just Leia, we had another connection with Howard the Duck with Leia Thompson.
That's true.
Right. So that's why I thought maybe something like that, was because she was in Howard the Duck, and she had that. Well, she did a lot of great roles in the '80s, but Back to the Future, I think she was fabulous in. Just playing the, and she's probably the character that I think morphed the most, not in just looks, but from the whole trilogy. Her character, was either, under the thumb of Biff, or, she was strong-willed in the 50s, or she was, in the future, just, a regular grandmother, matriarch type. So, I mean, there's a lot of great evolution of her character. She did fabulous in all of them.
And I think that had to be there. Out of all the characters that evolved, hers had to be. Because if she was as strong-willed as she was in the first one, if she was as strong-willed in the second one as she was in the first one, bad things probably could have happened to her. Like,
Yeah.
she had to play that submissive role to Biff, where in the first one she was the one in control. Because she could do that. She could be in control in the first one, and in the second one, who knows what would happen if she would have tried that crap.
Right. Yeah, and it was like one of those things where, if I'm remembering, when they went to the future, and then Biff was uh, in charge of everything because he made millions making bets,
Yep.
and he had Lorraine, who was Leia Thompson,
Yep.
under his thumb, and I just remember that, she was beaten at that point, but she had some strong will about her where she's like, I'm only doing this to protect my family, and I'm only
Right.
putting up with Biff because of my family. And that stayed consistent throughout that whole role for her. But for the different time periods that she was interacting with and the way she had to play it, you're like, what kind of Lorraine are we going to get in this movie? Or what are this situation? Even at the end of the first one, she's much different than when the movie started, because her husband is more confident, and because he essentially hit Biff,
Right.
and so because she had that confident husband, she was able to evolve also, because it was a much happier dwelling for her to raise her kids in.
For
So,
sure.
so yeah, I just it was interesting to see the way it was played. And, it's what I would attribute to good writing and good directing, obviously, because I mean, she would have been told, here's how you need to play that, but she did a fabulous job.
For sure.
So, let's see, who else are we going to pick on here? Doc Brown.
Oh, I love Doc Brown. He's coming to Salt Lake Comic Con this year. I'm excited to meet him.
Now, usually when you go to shows like that, you've got to like pay extra, like to meet somebody and get like a photo op. Are you one of those guys that pays that?
I'm not going to do a photo op. I'll just go to the booth and shake his hand or say hi or whatever.
Oh, okay. Okay. Usually the ones I've gone to, like C2E2 in Chicago,
Uh-huh.
they'll set the booth like further away from the main aisle, and you need to have like a ticket that you've purchased in order to get into the line, in order to get
Right.
up and interact with them. Usually the only time you can get like, the opportunity to just do a walk by handshake with somebody is basically if they don't have anyone else in their line, and you just want to go up there and say hi.
Yeah. They've been like that. Like, Lou Ferrigno was like that, and William Shatner. But like Kevin Sorbo, you could have talked to him as long as you wanted to. So
Yeah.
we'll see what it's like with Doc Brown.
I would assume he's going to have a line.
Yeah.
I would guess. But yeah, I actually had a good interaction with Ming Chen from Comic Book Men because of that.
Yeah.
I just was able to. I was wearing a T-shirt that had basically, it says "Bleep of the '80s" on it, and it had like a Game Boy on it,
Uh-huh.
and that was a conversation starter with Ming Chen, where we started geeking out about the Activision patches that used to take pictures of the screen and mail it into Activision.
Yeah.
And so I was able to go back to when he was at a booth on the side after he's doing autographs, and he actually podcasted with me for about 15 minutes. It was really cool.
Yeah, I think you put that up on the show, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so very cool dude. I just wish that I would follow up with him and like have him on like for longer. But,
Right.
But he's a busy guy. I give him that. So, all right. So let's see. Doc Brown. He was so comical, and just the way that he portrayed, that character and the way that we got him was just, it was amazing to see how animated a person could get even later in age, because a lot of what he was doing was very physical acting.
Yeah, it was.
And I'm just thinking that as I get older, I know I'm like, that's too much work, forget it. So for him to go, yeah, I'll do that, sure. I doubt he's flying down from the clock tower. I'm sure that was a stunt double, but I mean, there's still the setup that had to be involved in all of that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I've always thought he was a great actor, though.
I think he was my favorite character
I could see that.
in the whole thing, just because he was so animated, and he really fit into that. Apparently, you have to be crazy to be a mad scientist.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he was a mad scientist. He was probably on the verge of becoming a mad scientist. That's why in the end he said the time machine had to be destroyed, but then still went back and built another one because he was on the verge of becoming the mad scientist. But I don't think anybody else could have played that balance of being a mad scientist but not being a mad scientist.
Right.
Because he knew that when Marty showed up in the first one, if he knew anything, bad things were going to happen. But he was still crazy enough to read the note anyway.
Yeah, and that's got to be an interesting dilemma where if you're him and you remember everything that's happened from when Marty came back to the past, and when he's interacting with Marty, and he's at the beginning of the movie, and he's like, I need you to grab your camera and come down to the mall, and that he's already had this relationship, that he's been working with Marty, and all that time he knew that that's what was going to happen.
I think maybe that's what kept pushing him to insanity is the fact that he was living in both timelines. Because you don't just, I don't know, I'm no time traveler, but I don't think you could not. You would have to live both of those timelines.
The part that would mess me up is that I'm like, how do you not say something to Marty? How could you not somehow drop a hint, go, oh, well, let's not worry about that because in 2 days from now, you're going to go in my time machine and meet me back in the 50s.
Right.
How can you let something like that just, not let the cat out of the bag? I just don't know how. I don't think I'd be able to do it. I'd like to believe that that's a poker face, if anything.
Well, I think he was able to do it because the movie doesn't show you that there were multiple timelines until after. So let's say the first time they go to the mall and the terrorists show up to get their uranium, Doc might not. Well, there goes that theory. He had to have known. Never mind.
Yeah, I mean, he's already lived that moment. He's already lived all that stuff. He's already had that interaction with Marty back in 55. And when he first met Marty in the 80s, or even if he met him earlier than the 80s, I don't know. But they've already had where he was coming over to his house, taking care of the dog. He was, breaking his amplifier. I mean, all that stuff was happening. And while Doc was having that interaction with Marty, somehow in the back of his brain, he's got to be thinking, this kid is going to be, for whatever reason, going to be taking my time machine and going back to 1955, and I'm going to have to get him back to this point. And I'm just thinking, how do you pull that off? How do you not say something? How can you go on business as usual, knowing that that's going to happen?
For sure.
So that's my my question that I'd like to see answers. I don't think anybody's even broached that topic or not, but I just think Doc Brown really
I think it was a little bit easy because everybody already thought Doc was crazy.
Right.
If he had come out and said, hey, I have this time machine and I know it works because Marty McFly is going to be the driver of my time machine and he's going to go to 1955 and this is the problem he's going to face, everybody would have locked him up for sure.
True.
That would have been the proof they needed to lock him up in the insane asylum.
Yeah, but I mean, you're interacting with your friend. Your friend is Marty. You're Doc Brown. How could you go on for, let's assume they know each other for a year before this event happens. How can you go on that year knowing that at some point this event's going to happen where he's going to go back to 1955 and you'll have to help him get back to 1985? And by the way,
true.
that letter that you got written by him, you still have in your possession. So you have some sort of knowledge in the setup. I'm just thinking that I don't think I could pull that off. I don't think I could not mess that up in some way by telling or giving some sort of hint. I don't know.
So here's my time travel conundrum.
Okay, let's hear it.
What had happened if he had gone back further? Could you go back in time so far that you didn't exist? Therefore, you wouldn't be able to go back in time?
So you go back so far that you don't exist?
Correct.
So you go back so far that you do something to mess up that you're going to get born? Is that what you're saying?
Something like that. Have you ever read The Wheel of Time?
No, I have not.
Okay, so in The Wheel of Time, there's a spell called Bane. And it doesn't just kill you, but it kills your entire family lineage, from your father to his father, and so on and so forth, until you just stop existing.
That is...
So could you do it with time travel?
I think that's the risk of the whole time travel problem, is that if you are going back in time, you could do something that's going to wipe yourself from existence. Like, I mean, the exact issue that Marty had, where he had to get his parents back together. I mean, if that had gone unchecked, then Marty wouldn't have existed, and that whole situation wouldn't have happened. And Doc Brown probably would have died from stealing the plutonium.
What do you think Doc Brown did that he was able to get access to plutonium? You can't just walk into a drugstore, or more importantly, one guy showing up to a plutonium factory and be like, hey, I'm just going to take this. or like the Iranians come to you and say, hey, go get this. They're not going to come to you if you're just some drugstore pharmacist. Like, he had to have connections.
I would assume that, the circle, the people that were in those circles may have had maybe some knowledge of Doc Brown being able to be the man that could build them a bomb. I don't know. Maybe.
Right, but even if you could build a bomb, you still got to be able to get the parts, and you don't just walk into Area 51 because you're some guy off the street.
Right, well, I mean, he got the plutonium from the Iranians, but he had to have the...
Okay, so they got the plutonium, and then they gave it to him so he could build the bomb.
Correct.
I gotcha.
Right, so that's what was supposed to happen. But he gave them, I forget the way he explained it. Something like pinball parts or something like that, and it was one of those things where he was supposed to build them a bomb. He gave them just something that was substandard, and took the plutonium for his own purposes.
Nice.
So that's how that evolved. But of course they got wise, and then therefore they wanted to kill him. But my point being that if Marty didn't exist, then Doc would have died at that point. That would have been it.
It's true. Because he wouldn't have been able to save his life.
Yeah, because he wouldn't have had the note
right.
that was warning him, that's what was happening. So that would have been it. End of movie. Done. No trilogy. All right, so I think we beat up the timeline a lot. So the thing that
Oh no, there's one more thing we got to. Well, I guess it's not really I guess it's our timeline because it's becoming popular again.
okay.
I had a kid walk into work the other day. Oh, the other day I mean a few months ago, and he had a vest on. And my first thought was, I have to be nice to this kid. My second thought was, did you escape the Navy? And then out loud in my mind, I wanted to yell at everybody, this moron thinks he's going to drown.
That's good stuff.
It's good.
Definitely.
Because as much as I love the 80s, there are just some things that shouldn't come back.
So like the what did we call those vests?
Well, for example, what's the greatest lesson you learned from Who's the Boss? It's an 80s show. Greatest lesson you learned from that show is don't wear nylons and tennis shoes.
I just don't remember a lot of details from that one, other than it being just the vehicle for Mr. Danza.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, the grandma, because she lived with the family, she would always wear nude nylons and tennis shoes. And it just doesn't look good.
Yeah, it's a nice fashion statement there. But I want to go back to Doc Brown for a minute. So
let's do it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that in all the timelines that he was involved in, he was essentially the same character. So unlike Leah Thompson or Lorraine, he didn't evolve. I would say that Doc Brown was always the same character, regardless if he's in the Old West, the future, wherever. He was just dealing with the situation that was presented to him, and he was good. He was easy to adapt because I guess he was kind of getting used to the time shifts, but essentially always the same guy.
Well, I think everybody except for Lorraine was the same. I agree with you 100%. I think Lorraine, her role was to be the one that adapted. But Doc didn't have to have that role. And Marty didn't have to have that role either.
Well, yeah.
The example is in the second one, Marty and his wife go to save the kids because it's going to take both of them. Or more importantly, because they took the wife, it made things worse.
Oh, you're talking, it was Elizabeth
Jennifer.
Shue. Yeah, Jennifer. Elizabeth Shue in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then she passes out because she runs into her future self. Yeah, so, okay.
Yep.
I was trying to remember the scenario as to how it made it worse, but I remember her being in the house and then having to hide in the closet, and Marty dressed as a girl coming down. Yeah, so it was definitely a Marty just played, or Michael J. Fox played really well. Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but Elizabeth Shue, I know that the girlfriend had changed from the first one to the second and third one, but I'm definitely a fan of Elizabeth Shue. I think she, I've always liked her in a lot of the 80s staple movies, Karate Kid, Adventures in Babysitting, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, definitely, her being there, taking on the mantle of his girlfriend, Jennifer. I was a fan. So, let's see. Who else to talk about? Biff.
Well, yeah, let's talk about Biff.
Yeah, I think Biff, once again, I guess a lot like Doc Brown, where he was, in essence, the same character, with the exception of
Except
the
old man Biff.
The exception of the end of the first one, where he was waxing the car, right? And it was just he was very subservient at that point, but you could tell that there was I just need an opportunity and I'm going to, be on top again. But everyone, every other character, when you had him in the Old West, or you had him in the future, or you had him where he was a millionaire because of all the bets he won, still just a grade A jerk. And what a great character that he was playing.
Well, I think I'm going to
it.
guess that the guy that was waxing the car and Old Man Biff were from the same, how do I put it? I'm going to say timeline for lack of a better word. And this is why I say that. Because Biff always acted on emotion.
Right.
I want Lorraine, I'm going to get Lorraine. I want to bash her head in, I'm going to bash her head in. But the Biff that was waxing the car and Old Man Biff understood that if you want to get those things, you're going to have to do it right. If you want to get back on top, you're going to have to get the book, and you're going to have to do things the right way. Even Cowboy Biff did what he wanted to do because of his emotions. But Old Man Biff understood that that's not the best way to do things.
Right. Cowboy Biff. Was that Mad Dog? Was that his name? Yeah. Mad Dog Tannen or something like that? Yeah. Yeah, I guess in certain aspects he did evolve also. He got a bit of the lessons learned of,
need a knife.
I'm going to have to, I don't know, just evolve based on all the stuff that's happening in order to be on top. And then, he would just find a way to weasel his way to be just the grade A jerk foil that you needed him to be in all these movies. And you could always count on him to be that guy, and even if it was just his grandson, Griff, that was, still a jerk,
Right.
But, essentially the same character, but just, working well through the timeline.
Yeah.
So who else are we not talking about? Who else do we need to pick on here? We got Biff, we got Jennifer.
We can pick on the dad. I mean, because
George.
Really, Daddy?
George always seemed to play the cowardly type.
Get to cut that one and
which was probably good for his role, but I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that.
Well, I mean, I like what happened on the message with his character for the first one. You had this guy who really allowed things to happen, allowed himself to get abused, beat up, and then to finally, I've had enough, and I'm going to stand up for myself.
Dad, you've got to cut the beads off.
Yeah.
You have to cut the beads off.
Just eat around them, okay? I'm busy.
Cut the beads off?
Apple seeds.
Oh, apple seeds. Oh, okay. Yeah, we gotta make sure we don't eat apple seeds. But, where was I going with that?
The evolution of characters.
Yeah, no, I was trying to think of, I like the evolution of what happened with George McFly on the first one, from the guy that was downtrodden and getting abused all the time, and then just finally, I've had enough, and I'm going to take this moment and stand up, and then it has his character kind of metamorphosed to a better self, a better sense of himself, because now he doesn't, it's like, I'm going to have faith in what I'm creating these stories, and I'm going to be able to have enough guts to send it in to get it published.
Are you talking to him?
Yeah, for sure.
So I like I like that message as to what happened in the first one with George. And I don't think George really had a strong storyline outside of the first one, though.
No.
Yeah, because it was all. I mean, there was a George element in the Old West, and I'm trying to remember how he was involved in that. But I just remember that it not being as significant as the message as the first one.
That's true. And there was multiple messages, because you could have... Well, maybe there wasn't. Hitting Biff really, really defined him. Because having Darth Vader come from the planet Volcor to tell you that if you don't ask her out, really didn't seem to do the same thing as hitting Biff did.
Right. Right, because, I mean, it forced George into action. But even when he was confronted with the, his great moment, which was leading up to him hitting him, there was a moment there where he was going to get beaten again.
Yeah.
And he had to finally just go, okay, well, I've had enough. I'm going to do something now. And that involved that very powerful hit. And, and you could tell at that moment. And all credit to Crispin Glover at that moment is where he, I can't believe I just did that. And I gotta say, that's a... Whoa.
Go tell those guys to not yell so loud.
It sounds like there's good times over there, though, Kev.
Mortal Kombat versus DCU. Here's a really important lesson.
Okay.
From the movie, and it applies in any timeline, I think, because Biff was going to give Lorraine exactly what she wanted. She was looking for a bad boy, and she wanted it in Marty, but she wasn't going to get it from Marty. Biff was the bad boy that she wanted. But Biff was a jerk, so she didn't want it from him. Just because someone wants something doesn't mean they want it from you. Doesn't matter what it is. A job, whatever Lorraine wanted. Just because they want it doesn't mean they want it from you.
Wow. Wow, that's an interesting message.
It's an important message, though.
Yeah. So you think that Lorraine wanted a bad boy?
Want one?
A little bit.
Huh. Okay. I guess. I mean, the way she put it was she wanted somebody that would stand up for themselves.
Let's say a little bit edgy.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily bad, but edgy.
Right.
But the moral of the story is that just because somebody wants it, just because I want $1 million, doesn't mean I'm going to go rob a bank or sell my soul to the devil.
That's a good point. Okay. All right. So, is there anything else about Back to the Future that you want to talk about?
Nope, I think we talked about it. The fact that the time machine was still supposed to be destroyed, but Doc built a new one anyway. Being excellent to each other. There's another 80s reference.
Yeah. Party on, dude.
Yep.
Be excellent to each other. Caught that one right away.
Be excellent to each other.
Yes.
That's an important lesson, too. Different movie, but be excellent to each other.
A lot of good lessons learned from Bill and Ted.
There was. And if you would just be excellent to each other and party on, and I realize that partying on means different things to different people, and sometimes you can party too hard and bad things happen, but if you're just excellent to each other, a lot of problems in this world would be solved.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think a lot of our issues that we have in the world right now is people not being excellent to each other.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah, I would love everybody to adopt that philosophy right now.
So you cut it and
I also think, yeah, never mind. The car race at the start of the second one? Yeah, it's the start of the second one or the end of the first one, where Marty's got his truck and they're going to go race those guys.
Right.
But then he backs out, and it's a good thing he did, because if he kept going, he would have got hit.
Yeah.
It's good to have fun, but don't be stupid.
Right. Now, that's the thing that I didn't like about those movies. That whole suggestion that if you call Marty chicken, he's going to bend over and do whatever it is that, you're trying to goat him into.
Right, and it usually just made it worse for the other person.
Yeah, I mean...
Because everybody has their line. And, yeah, I'm usually not a lover but a fighter. I'll make it a case of your exception. We all have our lines, and if you push us to those, we're going to act differently than you think we will.
Yeah, it just seems that it's a weird line for somebody to say. It's something as simple as calling me a chicken. I don't know. It just feels like there should be a little more to it than just that. Because, if you remember, when they were in the future, there was some sort of card thing that he was supposed to swipe, and then all of a sudden it ended up him getting fired. And the guy that was trying to get him to do it, all he had to do is say, "Are you chicken?" And all of a sudden he swiped his card, and then he gets fired. And then it's like the whole racing thing. "What are you, chicken?" And all of a sudden he starts to race, but then he backs out. It's just like, it seems like there's got to be a better, something a little more significant than just calling me something. And that's the weakness that I found in Marty, was, just a simple name calling. I'm like, and maybe it's just the way I'm wired, because I'm like, if that's the way you feel about me, then so be it. I'm going to move on. I'm not, yeah, maybe it's just me. Other people are probably wired a different way, I guess. But I would think that that's a little too simple for just a name calling. And then all of a sudden I'd be like, all right, I'm going to do what you're trying to get me to do.
Definitely.
There's too many moral messages here in our podcast today.
Well, sometimes that's how it goes.
No, I get it. And it's all good stuff. So, what about Back to the Future? What else did you want to talk about?
I don't know. I think we've covered it. Unless we want to get in depth to each movie.
No, I mean, I think what we've done with a kind of a roundabout analysis of each character is pretty fun.
I like it too.
Yeah, so I didn't see that this is the way the conversation was going to go when we originally talked about it, but I'm very happy with that. I think that having that thought process of these characters as they've evolved through the timelines of these different movies, it's an interesting discussion. And I guess I've never really given it too much thought, until tonight, which is great. And I guess the question that I want to, leave us with is, did Mr. Strickland ever have hair?
I don't think so. Or more importantly, when did he lose it?
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. We're doing all these reboots and remakes. Let's make a Back to the Future where we find out when he loses his hair.
That's a very important thing to find out. I'll tell you what happened with me, if that helps. For me, it was a choice of shaving myself as going bald, just for the fact of every time I was getting my hair cut, that spot in the back of my head was getting bigger and bigger. It's so much that I didn't want the person that was cutting my hair to put the mirror behind where they show you how the cut came in. I'm like, no, we don't need to look back there. That's good. So, and then finally I had the opportunity where my kid was doing a St. Baldrick's event where you get your head shaved for children's cancer research. And we did this event together. And then once I had it shaved to a buzz cut, I was like, well, I'm just going to shave it all off and see how it goes. And I've done that ever since.
Nice.
So
I've had my head completely shaved and baked a few times.
Yeah.
Normally I just buzz it really short, but...
All right. I think there's a lot less muss and fuss when all you got to do is run a razor over every so often, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you the last time I've had to pay for a haircut. So, which is nice. But yeah, that's Mr. Strickland for you. So if we are kind of wrapping up, then did you want to talk about, I don't know, any other 80s movies that you want to throw some references out?
So I'm going to do a contest this summer. And I'm going to be the wife from My Stepmom's An Alien.
Okay. And that's,
I'm going to wear that red dress and funny hat.
Nice. Very nice. My Stepmom is an Alien. Who is in that?
Oh, shoot. Now I'm going to have to bring it up. Because I know who's in it. I just can't think.
Yes,
IMDb. The dad from My Girl is the dad in the movie.
All right, Dan Aykroyd, Kim Basinger, John Lovitz.
There you go. You're faster than I am.
Yep, had my IMDb at the ready.
I had it up when we were debating who was in Mighty Ducks. And then I took it away because I was wrong.
Sorry.
I don't mind being wrong.
Well, I was like, if I was going to leave that out there, I was like, I wonder how many people listening would catch it, and like, and that's the thing is, we've done podcasts for a while, and we've been way wrong on stuff, and nobody says anything.
Like I said, I don't watch movies for the people, because like the other day, what was I watching? I was watching the Batman animated series where he is with Batgirl, and in one of the episodes, there's a toy maker that's trying to kill Bruce Wayne.
Right.
So they get a private detective or they get a detective to be his personal bodyguard. I can't remember the detective's name, but the voice was Kronk from Emperor's New Groove. I didn't know that until I heard the voice.
Right. Okay. That's good stuff.
So, like, most of this stuff, I'll hear it and I'll be like, maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong. But if it's something I really enjoy, like gaming, I remember stuff. So I can call Scott out on his mistakes. Like, gaming with Scott, your characters know who the bad guy is because when he first came into this world, his lover called out his name. Things like that.
Okay, so you remember those kind of details, but like you're not retaining like the actors and actresses from...
No.
Okay. Fair enough.
The only actor I remember is Audrey Hepburn.
Okay.
Doesn't matter what movie it is, she always stands out because she was smoking hot.
She was, definitely. I'm trying to place her from... What was she doing in the 80s?
I don't think she was doing anything in the 80s.
Bring her up. See what happens.
That's what I was just going to do.
She died in 93. In the 80s, well, They All Laughed. She was in a TV movie called Love Among Thieves, and she was in something called Always.
Yeah, I have no idea what those are.
Yeah. So when you're thinking of her, you're thinking her...
her heyday.
Yeah, Breakfast at Tiffany's kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, sounds like we're kind of wrapping things up here then. Kevin, you want to tell people how they can find you?
So they can find me on iTunes at The Kevin Long Show. They can find me on Twitter at The Swamp Pit. And they can find me on Facebook at either Kevin Long or The Swamp Pit.
Very cool. And I am Dave. Take care of our 80s Reboot accounts. And while we're on Twitter, that's at 80s Reboot. And then Tumblr is 80sreboot.tumblr.com. Facebook is facebook.com/80sreboot. You can throw us an email. That's 80sreboot@gmail.com. And we got a blog. That's southgatemediagroup.com/80s reboot blog. So a lot of ways that you can kind of reach out and stay connected with Kevin and or 80s Reboot, and we encourage you to do that. So on behalf of Kevin and myself, we appreciate you reliving the 80s with us, and have a good whatever.
Hey, Dave's not going to bring it up, so I will. If you do go to either of the shows on iTunes, hit the subscribe button for us, okay?
Yeah, normally I have Rose who tells us to write reviews and stuff, and I just feel like that's kind of her niche now. So I don't.
Fine, I'll play Rose for you.
I appreciate that. But you're right. Not only subscribe, but also review. So both of those things would be awesome. If you could do that for the Kevin Long Show and 80s Reboot Overdrive, we would totally appreciate that. So, as I said, have a good whatever.
For sure. Thank you so much. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, actually, I didn't see the conversation going the way it did, but I'm glad that I can still continue to be surprised with the conversations.
That's good.
Yeah. We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.